So yeah, now I'm just talking to famous people in gaming industry.
And then you found me as well on top of
Yeah.
that.
Why do you think diversity is really important in the gaming business industry?
You can see I'm eager to answer back because I got exactly where you're getting to. Is there a need for ethnic minorities in the video games industry? And we almost all round the table say there isn't one. If you're sitting in a room and designing concept for a game or so, and if everybody is agreeing, there's something wrong in that room. It's not the industry is not welcoming, it's the perception of the industry. It's 70% male, white male dominated industry. Actually, my gamer tag goes back 25 years ago.
Hi, I'm Sarthak from Trigger 2, also known as Nighton, and you're watching Spawn Point. Today, I'm joined by Kish Hirani from BAME in Games. How are you
Hi
doing today,
there.
Kish?
I'm good. How are things with you guys? We hear a lot of news, but how is it on the ground in India right now?
It is really bad. It is as the news suggests. So we're all basically trapped inside our homes. We don't really want to go out because the numbers are actually true. Some cases even suggest that numbers are underreported and cases are more than what they're saying. So yeah, it's just sad. I had a trip out planned outside and kind of a volunteership in Turkey in June, and now
Right.
it's probably cancelled because of all that's going on. So yeah, now I'm just talking to famous people in gaming industry.
And then you found me as well on top of that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that this is the most productive use of my time in all of the lockdown since it
Uh,
started last year.
and that's fantastic, and that's the attitude you have. Just make the best of what you have. I mean,
Hmm.
like right now, I mean, if you look, I haven't had a haircut in 13 months because all those shops have opened up and things have got slightly to normal. We're still in lockdown in the UK. So,
Hmm.
you know, the best I can do is actually just go out for walks and exercises. So gyms are still closed. And so, yeah, so, you know, at every level in any given country, nobody's better off. It's just all relative, right?
Yeah, it's it's bad. Let's just put it
Yeah.
there, and let's talk about the
And make
good
the
things
best
about
out of it.
games. Yeah,
Exactly.
make the best about it.
I like that.
So, all right, can you tell me about a bit of about yourself, what you do, and how you got into the gaming industry in general?
Sure. Okay. Right. So I've been in the video games industry 25 years. We'll not go way too much into depth of that because otherwise that would be an episode on its own or so.
That's more than my
Uh,
experience on Earth itself.
there you go. Wow. Uh, so I started off as a programmer, and I graduated at Edinburgh University, and I was actually hired while I was still doing my master's degree. It's nice to have a job the day you're going to leave university. And so, yeah, I started off as a programmer, but then very quickly, and it's just circumstantially, got a position as an assistant technical director at a company called Probe. They did Die Hard Trilogy and way back, if you remember, Extreme G on Nintendo 64, a lot of Nintendo 64 games or so. But then I got basically promoted circumstantially because the technical director decided to resign. And that's where my role of not programming and becoming a manager or a technical director or a leader sort of dropped in the deep end game. And since then, I have been in various leadership roles. So multiple of companies, some of the names you would have heard, like Microsoft and then Sony. I've worked at BBC Multimedia as well. So worked on Bob the Builder, was a technical manager there. So been around quite a few number of other companies, Acclaim, THQs. The longest stretch was at Sony for 8 years. I was head of developer services. So anything which is historical PAL region, which actually includes India as well, that was the entire world minus Japan and US, which came under my team to help develop optimized product for every PlayStation platform that was out there in those 9 years or 8 years I was out there. That position was made redundant, and then I became self-employed. And just tie in everything in terms of BAME Games as well. That's about the time when BAME Games was also formed. I became a founding chair. And it's very simple. It was very much of there was women in games, And we all gathered around a room and just say, is there a need for ethnic minorities in the video games industry? And we almost all around with the table said, there isn't one. And that's the reality, like, especially with diversity and a lot of these things which matter, you're there to make games. So it's not on your radar unless somebody points it out. And we all assumed somebody must be running something like this. And there wasn't one. So we had to start one. So BAME Games is actually a grassroots organization run by us. We all run it as a volunteer in our spare time. And that's pretty much, it's been our primary activity has been monthly meetups. It used to be physical meetups. We used to make sure ethnic minority individuals go to video games development studios within UK and get to see where they might be able to work, and some with the work that they can show off. Here's a place we'd like you to come and work. And then COVID happened, and we basically transition all that to virtual meets, which became even better in the sense that we made the best out of everything, because the world became, your screen. So anybody and everybody could attend. And, although, Britain is a tiny island compared to India. So we are very Southeast London focused. So everything happens in London. You set up a meet in London and 100 people will turn up, but then out up north, Scotland and even further south or so, it's difficult to have any traction without real good planning or everything. So with going virtual meant we got studios which are all across Britain setting up virtual meets, and I ran a panel across, and we still do, and it's been incredibly successful.
So you told me that when the BAME in Games was formed, you were looking at the fact that your business is to make games, not include diversity. But I want to come back to that fact. Why do you think diversity is really important in the gaming business industry? Because as a developer, the most important thing is to make a good game that sells well, right? So where does diversity come in? I'm sorry, I keep blocking you.
No, that's great. You can see I'm eager to answer back because I've got exactly where you're getting to. I was just going to say it's not just video games, but any creative industry. In fact, any industry, why diversity matters is the exact same question. When you've got a diverse team, you create a more diverse, inclusive product, which is your entire audience, but it makes business sense, especially in the creative industry. It brings in innovation. It brings in diverse thinking. I always give this classic example of when you're, especially video games design, if you're sitting in a room and designing concept for a game or so, and if everybody is agreeing, there's something wrong in that room, and you're probably going to get a very terrible product. There should be at very, very early stages, a lot of diverse opinions, and that's how good products are made. That's how good films, scripts, everything. Pixar gives a very good example of where they, they say, innovate and fail fast, and then decide very, very early after you've had lots of prototypes. And that's only possible by diverse thinking, and a very easy way to have diverse thinking is actually having a diverse team.
So having a diverse team actually leads to a better product in the end, which means more money.
Absolutely. Just, it's a no-brainer. It makes business sense. Because the world we are right now, the consumption, especially for video games, it is a mass market product itself. So that mass market, and some of the statistics which are coming out, we know for sure is 50-50 male and female as well, in terms of who actually consume games. Depends on which type of games or so. So again, why are you going to eliminate this amazing audience out there ready to actually spend money and buy your games?
That's nice. So you've been with the video game industry for 25 years, and you've been working as the chair of BAME in Games. How diverse is the gaming industry in UK?
So we're not that diverse. So it's only 10% ethnic minority in the video games industry. And if you're further down, it's like 7% Asian. Out of that 10% or so, but neither is females in the video games industry. So it's not just ethnic minority, but it's 70% male, white male dominated industry. So diversity, and that's pretty much Europe-wise, and US, it's very, very similar. So, and maybe if your follow-up question is like, why is that the case? A lot of And pretty much it's not the industry is not welcoming, it's the perception of the industry. And not enough people are coming into the industry as a serious career. And we could probably talk a bit more about this, but it is still considered as it's just video games. I mean, I can tell you right now, I mean, 25 years in the video games industry. My grandpa, who never left India, if I had to explain what I do for a living, he wouldn't have a clue what I was doing, and he still didn't know what I was doing for a living. Same with my dad. My dad lives in Britain, is originally from India, and he never could tell anybody what I did for a living until I joined Sony or Microsoft. I was like, oh yeah, he works for Sony. And the key names are the ones which it's easier for them to say. But I was headstrong. I wanted to be in the video games industry, so I got into that. But we've got minorities where your parents, your mentors, your teachers as well, the society itself just telling you this is not a serious career. Get a serious career like doctors, lawyers, accountants, everything else.
I guess I can relate to that Asian mindset of yours right there.
It is, yeah. And I think and we always, it's like, and it's amplifies, unfortunately, when you're Asian, especially, or ethnic minority, because your parents want the best for you. But unfortunately, and I'm not belittling parenthood or so, but parents are the worst to ask for career advice for next generation, because they have not lived that generation. So if you're looking at what's the audience of the future, what's the jobs in the future, your parents are probably the worst to actually ask that question to and advise you, because they'll tell you what they relate to. I was a good architect, I was a good accountant, we are doctors, we've always been in the army, that's where you should go, it's a sure career. But how many times have you heard that some of these traditional careers are disappearing? And yes, they will disappear. And so yeah, you want to prepare a kid, sorry, I'm addressing now to probably the parents and mentors, you want to address and be fair on your kid and say, like, yeah, go and do what you want to do, what you think is the future, and obviously get some advice. But yeah.
So as you mentioned that the video game industry in the UK is just like 10% diverse. How is the statistics in, say, something like Canada or US? And also, when we talk about diversity, why are we always looking westwards? Why not eastwards, where the video games market, say in Japan, are really big, but they're really homogeneous?
Yeah. So Canada and US and all are very, very similar. It is and very similar that in sense it's not a serious career. So, but if you look at Japan, in fact, if you look at diversity, yeah, in Japan, majority of the team is Japanese. So to find a Westerner there, which is I used to work at Sony, so there are Westerners there, but they'll be like probably 0.5% of the Japanese population or so. So yes, again, on that end, it's a very not diverse as such. The reason why Western world and everything more grabs the headline or so, it's we've had a lot of settlements. Probably, I'll say it very bluntly, thanks to the British who decided to conquer most of the world or so. The beautiful thing which has happened, which a lot of people have settled, and not just Britain, in Europe or so, and the US, a lot of immigrants have gone out there or so. So it's a diverse population, and that's why it matters that diverse population should reflect those who are actually working in that industry. Whereas if you look at Japan, the population or the minority, that's pretty much in line with people who have moved into Japan.
Right.
Or for that matter, pick China or a couple of other Asian countries as such, and some with India for that matter. If you look at how many Westerners are in Indian studios, then you'll be like less than 0.5%. Actually, given the population, it'll be like 0.01% or something like that to ethnic minorities in India. Right?
Okay. So not on the question of diversity, but on the question of having diverse views in video games. Do you think establishing studios in places like China or India can help develop diverse games, or maybe better games at large? Say a team in China is collaborating with a team in UK, and then they have diverse opinions. Can that bring the diversity level up, or make the game better? Or is it better to just separate them?
It all depends. If I'll slightly be sort of not belittling anything, but as long as it's like for like team, then it makes sense. But otherwise, you're looking at say I was working, at Sony or so. So if you're looking at Naughty Dog, who's is developing the game, and suddenly you pick a team in Taiwan, then it doesn't quite relate to in terms of they're going to work. But having said that, the reason I picked that deliberately is Taiwan did a lot of outsourcing there, and they did a lot of art assets, and they're part of that team. But in terms of the design, there is a lead designer, and the whole development takes place on those studios. Absolutely, with the world, especially with COVID, we've actually skipped forward about 5 years in terms of remote working. That should be a great opportunity because it's very difficult, not trivial at all, to get visas and work visas. Now, suddenly, if you can remotely work, we've proven everybody can work remotely. Then why put those barriers still? And yes, people should be hiring people from all over the world and be able to remotely work. And yes, if they're a talented designer or so, then certainly that diverse thinking brings in a lot of innovation and creative, better product, actually.
Great. So now come back to your role at BAME and Games. Can you tell me what you do as the chair of BAME and Games, and what does the whole organization do in general?
Yeah, so we are a grassroots organization. We are almost pretty much a point of reference for the government bodies and art councils, etc., who want to have a point of contact within the video games industry. We work with trade bodies, etc. And then on the other end, we directly work with mainly indie developers, but any developer who are ethnic minority who want to be empowered to work in the video games industry. Majority of our members as such, and when I say members, there's no membership fee or anything. It's very much, we run it as volunteers. We empower them and get them introduced to diverse speakers, and that's more important, especially when you're young. Somebody like me, 25 years in the video games industry, I don't really care that if I join a studio and there's nobody ethnic minority there, I'll feel not belonging there. Whereas in younger people, it matters because to be able to see somebody you can relate to, I didn't even know this because you generally don't. But me just standing in front and talking about technology and my work, and when I was at Sony, that empowers a lot of younger generation of individuals. It's like he looks different. He's not your typical white male. And it's nothing wrong being a typical white male. They are the amazing individuals who form this industry. But it helps a lot of diversity because of that like everybody can make games, and that's a powerful message, I think. So within BAME Games, that's our very simple goal. As I said, we are a grassroots organization. Everybody's a volunteer. Everybody brings in their strength of what they can do, and we just then put the brand behind it, and then it becomes a lot more official of what they're doing, and we just get out and reach out to as many people. But it's at that point we become ambassadors of the video games industry, encouraging more people to get into the industry.
So we talked a lot about diversity in the video game making industry. How do you think developers can increase representation in video games, and how we as gamers can support that representation?
Seeing is, and everybody plays games. Being able to play an avatar which looks like you'll be able to customize or so, it's such a powerful thing. Yes, it probably wouldn't double your sales or anything of that, but then it's a nice thing. It's such a small thing you can put on there, but it makes the game a lot more richer. So as a developer, so absolutely, there's a rich world of the entire world of characters. Why restrict them to that one or two stereotypical characters? Especially you get a lot of publisher pressures, but that's very actually almost becoming historical, where publisher will just say, right, a big white male with a big gun is how we know how to sell this game. And it's actually more the publisher who is at fault there, not the developer, because developers always want to make exciting creative products or so, but they're dictated a lot by just saying, historically, this is the numbers and these are the figures. So they don't take that they don't want to take a risk as such. And That's where indie developers flourish, because they are quite small, where they can take a slight smaller risk to look at the market and be more innovative. And that pays off straight away, because you can't compete against the AAA studios. But if your product is diverse and innovative and you're getting nominated for awards for that, you standing out from somebody else financially, there's no way you'll be able to compete with them.
That's great. So do you think, how do you, should us as gamers go out buying indie games that are developed by a diverse cast to support diversity in video games?
Um, I wouldn't personally. I'm not one where people should. Money talks, yes, absolutely. If you don't buy certain games, then they will have to change those games or so. But just buying good games and playing good games. So it's down to, rather than buying an indie game, buy a game which has got great gameplay. And so, yeah, if your indie game has got great gameplay, you got to buy that, right? Yes, unless you've got a lot of spare
Yeah.
money on something and you just want to change the entire world by just buying certain types of games, etc. So, but if there's no gameplay, if you've not designed that game to be engaging, then however much diverse characters, a story or plot or whatever you put in, I personally wouldn't recommend somebody spending money on something just for the sake of it or so. We should be proud, and we should be able to show that this is the cream of the crop. Look at this fantastic game with rich characters, rich worlds, and it's a world which belongs to and reflects how the world it is right now, rather than one country or one continent. Or yeah.
All right. Okay. So we just talked about a lot of games. What was your favorite game while growing up and even now?
So my favorite game going, you said you weren't even born, and you definitely weren't born when that game was out. It's obviously a lot of games are restricted to the platform you have. So my very first game I actually ever played was in the
Mhm.
70s, was Pong, but that was everybody played Pong in the 70s if you're my age. But Chucky Eggs, I don't know if you've probably ever heard of it, but Dad had got me a BBC Micro. So by the way, I was born in Kenya and moved to Britain when I was a
Mhm.
teenager. So again, the only computer I ever saw was what Dad got me. It was a BBC Micro computer. I wanted a Commodore or Atari, like the well-knowns, but this was an educational machine,
Mhm.
so I started learning programming on that. So Chucky Eggs on there is the game I played. It was sort of it is a 2D platformer, and why I say it was my favorite is because it's the first game I ever finished and reached the end boss, and then repeated again and kept on playing and kept on playing. By having said that, more which you'll be, I hope you can relate to. My favorite games of all time, which I still brings in a lot of nostalgia, so was on N64. So Mario was the first game where just wowed me, and it's like the 3D. And in fact, that's when I joined the video games industry, and I only played it in Japanese. So I really didn't have a clue what the missions were apart from EA and Hi. And I started learning Japanese as well, inspired me to learn Japanese just so I could read the basic yes and no and navigate through the menus or so. So it'd be Mario first, but then the one and the entire N64 sort of my library is Zelda Ocarina of Time. That's my all-time favorite. I would go back. In fact, I still play it again. I'll just put my N64 again and just play, and it's just beautiful.
What
And
are you
sorry,
playing right these days from something
yeah,
from
something,
something the modern era?
yeah. So again, I'm not playing enough PC games right now, but on PlayStation, Ghost of Tsushima it took a lot of time of mine
Oh,
over Christmas, and I'm still playing it because I won the platinum trophy on that. So it's my favorite game right now. So favorite game of 2020, 2021-ish or so is Ghost of Tsushima. It's just a beautiful game. I love it. On a daily basis, and for the last is it 4 years now, you'll have to look that up. I still play Pokemon Go, and I love playing
that's
that, and I still play it. And in fact, in the video games industry, like global, my ex-colleagues at Japan, everything, we've basically set up a Facebook Messenger group, and we raid globally together. So I don't know if you play it now, but you can,
I
your
have
raids
played
are
it
set,
back
and
then.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot now because you can have a raid, like there'll be a raid behind my house, and I just invite everybody in, and then you go and raid the Pokemon boss and beat that. But it's all played remotely. But it's amazing how it's brought this video games community together. But for me, it's multiple other. Early in the morning, I actually got a beautiful forest, so I go far out for a walk. And if you probably remember from the days when you were playing, you had to walk to hatch an egg, and then the Pokemon hatches out of that.
Right.
So I try and do about 50 kilometers a week in the forest every morning. So I've got this motivation to get out. I love photography and stuff, quite a few other things, but just having Pokemon Go in my hand as well, it's nice to have that blend of multiple things. So yeah, in terms of favorite, I play all sorts of games to try them out in terms of research, see what's out there or so. But when it sticks, then I just get glued to them, and that it becomes my game.
And do you have a gamer tag as well? Because I had a gamer tag, and all my friends said that that might be cringy, but I like it so much that I made a show on that name. It's called Get Good with Knighton. Do
Wow.
you have something like that as well?
So I do, and actually, my gamer tag goes back 25 years ago. So it's actually THX 911, and I'll break that down for you. So THX, I've been a George Lucas fan ever since I was young or so. So George Lucas's first movie was THX 1138. So actually, very early days, I used to use THX 1138, but then I love Porsche 911s as well. So then, and when I say early days, like Duke Nukem and online games we used to play in the mid 90s, that's when I got my gamer tag, and is actually stuck on, and I still have, and on my PlayStation ID is THX 911. That's my gamer tag, and that's the beautiful thing about gamer tags, that in video games industry, that is one of your identity, and it's nothing new, because in the army, in the, you've seen Top Gun and everything, that gamer tags or your COD tags have always been there. A lot of the times is so the enemies don't detect you and don't know your real name or so. So historically, that identity has always existed. So especially the army and stuff like that. So it is amazing that the video games industry has got this culture, and you should be proud that this is your second name. And I guess if you want to demand, you should actually say, that's how I want to be addressed from now on. Why not?
Yeah, I want to change my name in passport from Sarthak to Knighton. That would be great. All right. So I looked up about your current, what you're doing on the daily, and it had something to do with blockchains and stuff. Can you explain about that?
Basically, I'm self-employed, so I do consultancy, and I'm CTO of a couple of new startups or so. So one of them was blockchain. It's about 3 years ago. Blockchain's pretty interesting in sense of the killer app right now, and sort of what most people associate blockchains with is cryptocurrencies, and then you get your bitcoins and everything else, and that takes you into sort of a path which then is difficult to then relate to what blockchain and the strengths are, especially for video games. And so maybe I'll explain in that, because that makes a lot more sense. So I think most people, I'm assuming, will assume, blockchains, it's all about money and decentralized networks. So then you've got this cryptocurrencies, etc. Forget all that. What blockchain exactly, what it's being used for currencies, for that matter, so is a very simple, basic way is you can create digital scarcity. So you can, as a developer, say, I'm going to create 100 of this certain items, virtual items, and then you could add digital scarcity on that. So it becomes a collector's, and it guarantees, because it's on a decentralized ledger. So then nobody can tamper with that. When you say they're 100, they're only 100. It's digital, of course, so you can make a clone of it. But then because it's not on the ledger, then it's a clone. And that's the beauty of blockchain in terms of a very simplistic sense. But fast forward, where future of in terms of how we see this coming into games, a lot of nobody has really done this that well yet, and it's going to be future, is your characters, your uniqueness in what you do. So just give you an example. Right now, classic example, Zelda. If I was playing Zelda, the lead character, if I'd customize that, once N64 is history, that game is gone. And yes, if I've probably got a save game, then I have to either find an emulator, etc. So with blockchains, what you can guarantee is the publisher doesn't own the character, you or the items or the dance move or something very custom you invested in. It becomes yours on a blockchain. So if the publisher happens to disappear, the game happens to disappear, that character still digitally remains your signature, and anybody else can make a trophy cabinet or something, and where you can then still see the item. And not just that, you can do a lot of interesting things, and I would love people to come up with different, once this becomes sort of well established, and a lot of developers are working on this. But say you and I go and beat a boss, and we get battle scars, so textures on our characters because you had that fight, and you are a super famous vlogger, everybody knows you. So suddenly that becomes a very unique piece of history, that this epic battle which took place, you beat the ultimate boss and you were the first person to beat it or so. Then that character with that battle scars, just like real life where you show off your battle scars, especially if you're a kid, it's a cool thing to show, but maybe if you're older, slightly different. That can remain forever with you. And that character then, you can do exciting things. So for example, and I can get carried away on this, but I'll probably end here. But you could do, say, for example, sell off that character, and then somebody else will use that character, just saying, hey, this was a famous vlogger who, this character is mine. But if you're well famous, you're probably not going to give it away for that cheap or so. So if you can't afford, this is more exciting. Again, very possible with blockchains and decentralized ledgers, is you can loan it for, say, 2 weeks, because you can only afford to have it for 2 weeks for like $100 or something like that, which probably sounds a lot. But then after 2 weeks, it guaranteed it comes back to you, and it doesn't belong to that character. And that's the beauty of this, that there's a lot of amazing, exciting things we'll be able to do. But I think what's happening right now, and which is very obvious, is it's becoming the digital collectible platform, where you can guarantee that it is limited editions, one of only or so. So yeah.
All right. So I want to wrap up all of this now, all of our conversation, with one last question. What's the one career advice that you'd like to give to the youth? And how important is formal education? Because I know some of my friends who'll be watching this, maybe thinking that Sarthak just got a bunch of famous people from famous studios to get career advice from them to get into the gaming industry without going through formal education, which may be not so untrue, but I really want to get this. How important is formal education, and what's your career advice?
Yeah. I would say education sets you apart. So, but video games industry, unfortunately, if you want to get into it, it's incredibly popular. So when you apply for any role, there will be, assume 100 other people will apply for that role as well. So having that formal education also helps your CV stand out. They know you've gone through that discipline. It doesn't matter what degree you've done to a great extent, unless it's a programmer, especially if you're an artist or so, then it's not that important. All that degree or education you've got is showing that you had that discipline you went through, and so you stand out. It's the key thing. But I think with programmers it's slightly different. Having done a master's or having done research in certain rendering technique, that guarantees you almost to stand out from everybody else who's not done that degree or so. So that's going all the way stretch out there to that level of formal education or so. But to me, nowadays, and especially in the West, just formal education on its own is useless in getting into the video games industry. You need to have a good demo. I always tell everybody, by the way, you've got a games console in your hand, in your pocket, you roam around all the time. You've got Unity, Unreal, middleware, everything, be able to develop. If you go in an interview and just say that this is what I studied, that's not good enough, because that's what everybody else is going to come on. if you have had education. If you've not had any education, then good luck that. But then on top of it, you'd be able to say, hey, here's a game I've created. Would you like to see it? And when I was at Sony, or every time I've been in interviews or so, I always ask, right, what have you done on your own? Can you show me something? And majority of the people we end up giving the job to is they just say, hey, here's my laptop. Do you want to, like, this is the game I created, or this is what I worked on, and I optimized this so it actually works better. So, and that's where it stands out. So you need to be better than your formal education, in the sense that you have to show you've done a lot of extracurricular activities of doing development at home. But not just, I mean, we're quite lucky in the West. I don't know if it's very similar in India or not. I should have done my research, but we've got a lot of formal education, like video games course. So University of Aberdeen in Scotland actually is, I think now, it has to be 26 years or 25 years they've been teaching video games programming. And so there are degrees in the US, Canada, Europe, and UK for sure. We've actually got about 20 universities which has got credible degree courses. So suddenly if you've got formal education and then there's somebody coming from a degree which is actually video game specific, you don't blame a company or them to actually end up hiring them instead. But as I say, on top of that, they will need to show some of the artwork and or whatever demos they've made. But these courses are that great as well, because they actually put you into teams while you're in university, and you do game jams and research jams. So you do create something, and it helps you create that portfolio, which is exactly what developers are looking for. So short answer, and again, by the way, not everybody is bright to go through university or so, and not every career requires you to have a degree or so. So being able to show all that, if you're just a naturally good programmer, and you don't want to go through that sort of formal education, but you've managed to do some render engine or something which just looks super cool or so, then the passion is what you need to, but you need to show something that you've done it, and the ability to, yes, most companies will have a programmer test. You'll have a whiteboard where you'll be told to design a system, and if you can design that right in front of them, then personally, I wouldn't care if you don't have a degree. If you can illustrate to me that you can do that job as good as anybody else who had a degree, then yeah, I would definitely consider you. And one last thing I'll just say, which is unfortunately always the disadvantage, is you don't know who else has applied for that role. So all you're doing is, with the educated guess, making yourself stand out. So at any given time, just be far better than anything, even you've set yourself as a standard, because then hopefully you'll stand out. And the company then basically has to hire the best from who they've interviewed, right?
All right. All right. So that was all. Thank you, Kish, for being on Spawn Point. Any last words from you?
I'd probably say one of the interesting things is the video games industry, and this is unfortunately not going to change the perception of the video games industry in terms of a bigger picture. And we've had, like the film industry, the music industry, hip hop, rock and roll, where if something goes wrong, there's some violent crime, there's something else, so they blame it on film industry before, and then it was because they were watching violent movies, etc. Now, video games industry we've had this patch where it's blamed on they were playing video games or so. Now, one of the things, unfortunately for us, but because we know this, we should be fortunate that we're not going to. I think the world won't let go of that, because you would have thought the natural next thing people should have picked on is social media. So it's because they're on social media. That's why they created. So people, when they don't understand human psychology of why somebody created something or did something really terrible, they try and map onto something so it distracts. So, a lot of governments and a lot of politicians tend to use this because it just gets them an easier session with the media of like, right, this is what they were doing, and figured out why they committed certain things or so. Well, because video games industry, and this is how wonderful our industry is, that we've actually embraced social media inside video games. So, you've got your chats and everything else in the games. So there's no escape. We are part of social media. And so we just have to, and this is for everybody else, so that we have to be good ambassadors of video games industry and just illustrate that that's always the minority and it's never the cause. There's other root causes of individuals when they do whatever else they do. And video games industry are just absolutely fantastic. And it's especially in the lockdown right now in COVID, it's, your mental health, being able to network, you're playing games socially. That is an absolute fantastic thing to do for your brain as well, and social interaction in a closed environment. So yes, I love video games. Wouldn't have any other career. It's probably how I'm going to end.
Yeah. I share that passion as well. That's why I'm in the gaming media industry right now, and I want to transcend to that gaming industry.
Fantastic. No, good stuff.
All right, everyone. So that was Kish on Spawn Point. See you later. Goodbye.
I am fond of video games since I was a little kid. Different games at that time, like Beyond Good and Evil and Prince of Persia.
Have you faced any challenges in the industry, being from a diverse or marginalized group?
Yes, every day. I think it's about the main question is about the different point of view that you can see in a video games industry.